Hello? Oh, it works. How's it going, everybody? Yeah! We have an amazing panel up here. I didn't know about it until 2 minutes ago, so you know it will be perfect. It is budget versus performance. We have some great people up here. Pedro from PCMR, Low Budget Gamer, Science Studio, Paul.
Low Spec Gamer.
Low Spec Gamer, sorry. I mean, that kind of falls in line. You know. All right, speaking of Low Spec Gamer, budget versus performance is the conversation. The first question that I have for everyone up here. Oh, that's actually the third question. Let's go to the first question. Is it better to upgrade your PC piece by piece and squeeze everything you can out of a mature platform, or to upgrade all at once with the latest and greatest? What do you think?
It really depends on what you want to do, because everyone is different. We don't all have the same needs. We don't all have the same skills, the same tastes. Some of us like to game a lot and don't really use our PCs to work. Some of us only do work and enjoy the technology but don't really appreciate the gaming part. I think you really have to look at your specific situation and look what really matters to you and how to approach it. So both approaches are valid. It really depends on what you got and what you want to do.
Okay, so yeah, it depends. If you're in a very sort of desperate, low-budget situation where no matter what you can pull together, you cannot build something out of new parts, there's like techniques that you can use to build something super janky but that works with modern games, just salvaging components. I have met people who have built components from stuff they find on trash. And when you do this, obviously, you're limiting your upgrade abilities in the future, but if you're completely desperate, that's a complete valid entry point when you're starting to do gaming. But if if you have the money to do something that you can upgrade in the future, that is also a possibility. It's just a matter of what's the priority.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it too. Sometimes zombifying computers is a good way to go. What do you think?
I think the nature of PCs, right? They're supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to swap parts easily. That's one of the joys of building your own PC and just having a desktop, is it's easy to swap components. So I think it would be a disservice to the nature of them to upgrade everything at once because you feel like that's how you have to do it. So I think that approach is a bit flawed. It's very easy to upgrade graphics cards. It takes like 2 seconds, like a couple screws, and there you go. Download new drivers. Don't forget to DDU, and you're fine. So I think it's better if you can work piece by piece. Obviously, the platform's got to be done all at once, especially if you're upgrading, going from AM3 Plus to AM4. You have RAM to worry about, CPU and motherboard. That can be pretty expensive. But if you're not CPU bound to a hyper extent, I would say that a graphics card upgrade is not going to hurt anybody. Cool.
And Paul?
I think I agree with most of what's been said. I've always had a view looking at it like you have your core components. Core components to me is motherboard, CPU, maybe memory. Memory's more flexible now since DDR4 has been around forever. But upgrading that to me is like a major issue. Upgrading everything else, I think, can be done a little bit more piecemeal. A case can last forever. A power supply can last a really long time. Graphics card, like Greg said, is really easy to swap in and out. So I usually recommend, if you're looking at that upgrade, core components, that's more of a system overhaul, but you can just look at those. And then if you have stuff that you can bring over from an old build, then you can bring it over from an old build, and that can save you 50, 100, couple $100 on a nice system.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually going to come in here with a way more aggressive stance than everybody. Throw a little bit of a curveball. I think if you are doing an entire, like every single piece in your computer replaced build every time, you're doing it very notably wrong. Almost no matter what your price point, to a certain degree. If you're spending like 15 grand, sure. But your SSDs, your hard drives, you can always put those together, add more storage to your system. Your case doesn't need to be replaced every single time. It might be cool if you're doing like an aesthetic build for whatever reason to upgrade your case, but certain components don't need to go up. Like you were saying, I liked the platform example. I thought that was actually pretty good, because if you're going to do like a CPU upgrade, because you need a new CPU, it's probably going to come with a motherboard. It's probably going to go with RAM. So like that all comes as a package. And usually doing like sections of builds, like replacing the graphics card, or if you have a really cheap setup, like you were pointing out, you might have to replace something because if you pull it out of the garbage, it might break. So you're going to do sections at a time. And your graphics card is pretty common. A lot of times the games that you're playing, not always, but the games that you're playing might be graphics bound. So you might want to upgrade your graphics, but the rest of your computer is still fine. And that's like a 2-second upgrade. So it's really easy. So you should probably be doing it section by section at a time. There's no reason to toss out your old hard drive because you got a new computer. There's probably multiple hard drive spots on the computer. Just add it to your new build. Yeah.
And you shouldn't toss out an old hard drive. You should destroy it.
You should destroy it. Very good point. Okay. You don't want people seeing that history. Anyways, next question. Do you recommend buying used parts off eBay or even local secondary markets like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace? And what do you believe are the dangers? And let's go back through, and then I'll jump in at the end.
It really depends on where you are, for starters, because most of us here live in North America. It's not my case, and it's not the case of many of the people watching us, and even visiting us. If you saw the map, we have people all around the world. So some countries are very limited on what concerns second-hand parts, and prices sometimes can be prohibitive. It really depends on where you are. I'd say there's a buyer's market right now for second-hand parts, especially after the cryptocurrency situation stalled, and right now you can have a very decent graphics card that's tremendously cheap, which did not happen a few years ago. You can have like a 570, 580 cards that can run decently well, 60 FPS at medium settings, 1080p easily, and can probably in the US can probably get them used for below $100, I'd say. It's not so easy in other countries, unfortunately, but in the US, that's a good thing you guys have. But I'd say also RAM, we had very prohibitive prices with RAM a few years ago. It's getting back down again, so that's not, I think you should probably explore that market a lot. I do it for RAM especially. I don't know what happened to you guys, but I've never had a DIMM ever stop working in my life. I know that it happens, but it never happened to me. Stuff like RAM, stuff like graphics card, recent very cheap graphics cards, either new or used, especially used. I think those are deals you should definitely take advantage of.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with most of that. Like, if you are in a developed country with a very solid second-hand market, it's usually the way to go if you're trying to optimize for budget. But if you're in Brazil, in India, in Pakistan, in Asia, in any place in South America, even parts of Europe, the second-hand market sucks. Like, it's a 3-4 time markup for certain components. It's very bad. And in those markets, like even the low-end stuff, new, tends to preserve its price better between borders than the used stuff. So if you're confident in your used market and you can find good stuff there, yeah, it's a way of saving money. If you're in a market that is a hellscape in the used area, then yeah, absolutely, new might be better.
Yeah, I can only speak to the US, and I try to emphasize that in my videos because I have no idea how other markets work, and it's just too much to really take in. So I'd rather be an expert in one particular domain. And I would say that the two things you should avoid buying used, if you want to look at it this way, the first would be hard drives or SSDs. Those are the things I don't really tend to look at used. First off, you don't know what the hell's been on those drives, and you also don't know how many times they've been written over. And SSDs in particular have a pretty finite lifespan. So I don't like to touch those. I also don't like to touch power supplies because you don't know what systems those typically were in. You don't know how hot or how suffocated they were when they were running. And it's pretty easy to choke a power supply in certain cases, and you flip it upside down and someone doesn't know what they're doing. Graphics cards, though, for sure, I think it would be a sin to not consider the used market. I've really never had an issue with a card that I've bought on eBay or Craigslist or whatever arriving DOA. And if that does happen, most of the time you can get your money back. eBay's buyer protection guarantee is pretty solid. Craigslist, it's a little different. It's really tough to bring a PC, to like a parking lot in Walmart or whatever and test stuff out. So Craigslist is a little sketchier in that sense, but it's more direct, it's immediate. So I would say if you can help it, wait a few days, and eBay is going to be the better bet for more expensive hardware. But I would always consider it for graphics card, especially motherboards for the most part. How many, motherboards and CPUs? How many dead CPUs do you come across? Like you've really got to put it through the ringer to kill one of those for the most part. Same with graphics cards. You can break a fan or something, but those are pretty simple to fix. So.
Yes, I would agree with that. CPUs, I think, is one of the things that if it works, it works. And I've dealt with so many CPUs, and I've had so few actually fail. That's usually a pretty good bet. There's also fewer moving parts or just issues that can go wrong. I often consider when you're looking at used parts, you're saving money. So what you might have spent $100 on new, you can get for $70 used. Rather than looking at it like you saved $30, look at it like $30 is the premium you pay for getting that part new in a box with a warranty, with the return policy. That's what you're paying for when it comes to the difference between buying a new part and a used part. Beyond that, as has been already mentioned, when you're dealing with something like Craigslist, you really want to be able to test that part to make sure it's functional in some way, shape, or form. If the seller is willing to do that, then chances are it's a legitimate part that they know works and they're just trying to get some money for it. Beyond that, an option like eBay is going to give you more protection if you do get something that doesn't work or is a counterfeit part or something like that.
Yeah, so for me specifically, this is the entire reason why I kind of thought of the Scrapyard Wars idea and why we pushed Scrapyard Wars is we wanted people to, we were releasing a lot of content that I would describe as like Lamborghini content, where like you're showing off like, oh, this is the top of the line possible product, and that video gets tons of views, and then you show the more reasonable one, and everyone's like, eh. So we wanted a more fun and engaging way to show cheaper components, because no, not everyone should buy literally the most expensive thing they can. That's not actually usually the best way of approaching things. So we tried to show Scrapyard Wars. I was unaware of how terrible that can be in certain other countries. I've heard it's kind of bad. I didn't know there's actually like a markup in certain situations. That sucks. So maybe evaluate it. Don't necessarily just do that. I would also strongly go with the not necessarily all components. It's going to be a little hard to, like the supply options of CPU versus motherboards, it's going to be another thing you're going to notice. CPUs, again, they're kind of hard to kill almost, especially ones without pins on the bottom. And motherboards die quite frequently. So you'll find that motherboards are more expensive and CPUs are not. But try to figure out what's going on in your geo specifically, if there's a reasonable way to do something. Like I know in Vancouver, for one of the Scrapyard Wars seasons, I went to Free Geek. I didn't know that was actually an option, and they were cheaper than the rest of the used market in a lot of different situations. So there's like a store I could go to that had stock. It was way easier than trying to buy off random people, and it was more reliable and all that kind of stuff. So, and I didn't even know about it. So look into what's in your community, see if there's options like that. And yeah, see what you can do. Now, I'm going to go a little off card, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion. One thing I'm interested in, because it sounds like a lot of people here have used the used market in the past or gone budget and non-budget. I know it's budget versus performance, but tell me some horror stories on both sides. What's the time that you spent tons of money on a computer or tons of money on a build, or had a build that was worth lots of money, as I know some of you might get sponsored components. And what's the time you went really low and had a bad experience as well? Like what kind of things are going to be bad on both ends? If you don't have an example, that's great. I just want to discuss it across the stack. Do you have any examples?
No, I don't think I ever had a bad experience when purchasing parts and not having them work, except once I actually, by my own mistake, bought ECC RAM for a non-ECC motherboard, obviously, and that sucked, but yeah, okay, I had to take the hit, and yeah, that was my mistake.
That makes sense. This whole concept, I want to run through this, and I know people might have to think about it for a second. Maybe there is no examples, and I mean, that would be good, because we want people to have a good time with building computers in general. But this is why I did the compensator builds back in the days, because I wanted to show that spending too much on a computer can actually be like minorly detrimental. It's more about building the right thing for the right job than spending way too much money. Performance is really cool, and like finding a budget that you're comfortable with and maxing out what you can get out of that budget is awesome. And if that's a fair amount, that's really cool. I think we all have probably relatively good computers, and there's a reason for that. Performance is great. You don't have to go low budget on everything, but there's bad experiences on both sides, and there's generally great experiences on all the rest of the sides. Do any of you guys have examples for any of this?
So of bad experiences specifically. It's interesting because obviously I buy a lot of components all the time for the videos, and I've only had like one bad experience, which I think it's like a very good ratio. Yeah. When you're buying older stuff, like first generation i5s and i7s and stuff like that, like it's it's a Russian roulette. So only one time that I bought a really old i7 That didn't work at all. It was completely busted. And when I tried to approach the guy about it, he created all this very grand conspiracy about how I damaged it myself to try ruin his reputation or something. And it was like, this is not worse for something I paid 10 euros for. So just never message me, and I'm fine. It works. Forget about it. But that's one case among, I don't know, 100. So all the other ones have gone fantastically.
Anybody else?
The first time I ever bought a computer part online was on eBay. This is back when I was like 14. And I think I was trying to buy SD RAM. It wasn't even DDR yet. And they shipped me whatever the previous version of I can't even remember.
EDO?
EDO, yeah.
EDO.
I think EDO RAM. So they just sent me just completely the wrong type of memory. And I was like, responded to them. I was like, yeah, send me the right memory. And they ended up just like thumbs downing me on eBay and stuff, and I was just like, that sucks. But that negative experience, like pretty much across the board since then, has been pretty positive. Just trying to use common sense when shopping, and especially with used parts. I do have one horror story, but this goes back to my time at Newegg. Before YouTube or anything, I worked in the RMA department. We would get returns all the time. So we got an AMD FX 62 back being returned for a refund. Those processors were, I think, $1,050 at the time. This is the last time AMD was doing really well. We got it, and I forget why, but we ended up slotting it into a machine. Basically, it was like a $75 Athlon that was still socket 939. That they delitted, swapped the lids, and then tried to return it as a $1,000 processor. So even though earlier I said CPUs are usually pretty solid, they rarely fail, that is something to keep an eye out for. You can swap the lids on a CPU, and it's very difficult to tell the difference between them otherwise.
I have kind of a tangent of that. I went to school, in high school, there was a guy, his name was Thomas, and he graduated same time I did. He was a decent, scholar. I mean, he C's and B's for the most part. About 2 years ago, I see a huge news story. Apparently this guy had been driving around the country to all these different Walmarts and was buying pre-built PCs, ripping sticks of RAM out of them, and then returning them. So he was like pocketing hardware. And the police had like been trying to catch this guy because he was hopping all over the country. It's like unpredictable.
The RAM thief.
Yeah, no,
that's amazing.
The RAM bandit.
The RAM burglar.
It was expensive memory. I mean, back at 2 years ago, memory was twice, if not 3 times expensive as it is now. It was profitable. Yeah, but they caught him finally. But like, I literally sat next to that guy in psychology class.
Oh, yikes. Okay, yeah, that's actually kind of the general response I wanted, though, is like no real stories or a one-off that only cost 10 euros or a story that happened when you were 14 or this weird guy from high school. It doesn't happen that often. Budget is not as scary and used is not as scary as a lot of people might think. It's actually a pretty good experience. And if you think about the people in the community that might be selling this used hardware, it's you guys. It's not that bad. You're talking to another techie. They're usually pretty friendly about things. Now, I got another one that's off the cards. I want to go with, and anyone can answer in any order or talk however they want, but what do you prefer building? High performance, low performance? What is your kind of favorite thing to build? Personally, I'll let you guys think about it for a second. I actually really like doing the low performance stuff. I like squeezing everything I can out of a certain budget, or doing the Scrapyard Wars thing. I have like $300 and I need a computer that can play whatever. I have a lot of fun with that personally because it's not just like some of the budgets Linus Media Group gets when I used to actually make videos were crazy. We get so many expensive components and that's very fun the first few times, I'm not gonna lie. But after a while it's like, okay, shiny thing goes in, hooray. It's more fun to like have to try to fight for it personally, but I'm kind of wondering what you guys think.
So this is a very personal specific thing, evidently, but I love grabbing like the name of any component on Amazon and then sorting by price, low to high, and then buying whatever's lowest and seeing what I can pull with that. Sometimes you get bad surprises, but sometimes you get like really good surprises, like though you wouldn't expect to work as well. So that is more out of curiosity than functionality most of the time, but it's interesting.
Very cool. Yeah, I've bought an SSD that way, and it worked surprisingly well. It was ridiculously cheap, and it was great. I was like, okay.
One of the things I like the most, actually, is, as you mentioned, the part of squeezing every last bit of performance. Sometimes you, even at home, have like an old laptop or an old motherboard that has like a mid-range for the time CPU, and you can actually get like the very top-end CPU for that socket, for that motherboard, for that laptop, for super, super cheap. Sometimes, and this has happened to me before, I bought the highest-end one for like, I think it was £4 off of eBay, and I sold the mid-range one for like 7 or 8 because it was rarer. So yeah, I squeezed every last bit of performance out of that PC. It was a better CPU with a lower TDP, and I even made some money. So I love that part.
Cool. That's awesome.
I'm going to answer you two ways. First off, I guess I go towards budget because I do, like you guys, appreciate sort of just getting that bang for your buck, finding the right solution of parts that are available, putting it together for a reasonable price that fits in your budget, and you got a really nice system. That said, there are certain aspects to building the really high-end PCs that aren't even involved with the low-end PCs. Whether you love it or hate it, setting up RGB lighting in a computer it can be a horrible task, but at the same time getting it all together and turning all the pretty lights on and going and adjusting some stuff with the software, that can be really fun and cool. And so there is stuff that you don't get with the budget build that you might get to play around with the high-end builds. So that's kind of the difference for me. But if I had to make a call one way or the other, I think the budget builds, just because we want something that everyone can afford, and not everyone can spend $3-5 grand on a computer.
You can do RGB on a cheap build. I have done this.
You're right. You can.
Christmas lights.
But
Literally.
you can also buy a bunch of electrical tape and just tape it all over the outside of the system. I'm
happy that I think a few people got that reference. That's very cool.
In your build that won Scrapyard Wars.
Yeah, dude, whatever. I think we still have the trophy, so you can say whatever you want. I think we have the
people
trophy.
know the truth. Thank you.
I think for most of us anyway, like a majority of our audiences are going to be more budget-minded anyway. Like most people aren't rich. Like it's just the reality of it. And it's nice to build expensive stuff, but I agree it gets old because like you know it's all going to work. Like it's the most expensive stuff. It's going to work fine. But cheap stuff makes you work harder for it, you know. Especially the really budget stuff. Like some of that stuff you gotta work around to get it to even post. And like that kind of stuff is unpredictable. So I think from the builder's perspective, like if you're doing this for a living, and like we've probably all built dozens and dozens of PCs, like having it just be plug and play over and over just gets very cyclical and repetitive. And the used stuff really makes you think outside the box sometimes. Sometimes pairing really cheap hardware with really expensive hardware also makes you think outside the box. Pairing a $500-600 CPU with like a $30 motherboard is not going to be just easy, and if it works, there are going to be compromises. What are those compromises, you know? So again, you have to think more, I think, about getting cheaper stuff to work optimally. Yeah, so for us, it just breaks the cycle, I guess.
I think we're also, I think we're also all taking this from a very like personal build perspective. This you also have to apply different things to different scenarios. So like for me now, I'm not making videos, I'm doing flow plane stuff. So for my developers, I'm pretty much just buying new things just because I don't want any problems, and I don't really have the time to scour Craigslist for all the different developers' computers. So I'm spending time going on Amazon, spending like 5 minutes and being like, all right, cool, I'm gonna get that one and it's gonna be okay. They get NVMe drives and no graphics cards. But like, just take it as you will. If you're building a computer for yourself, maybe go the Craigslist route, because if there are any problems, you can deal with it. If you're building a computer for a job, maybe don't go that route, because having the warranties and having even if it's small, having the increased reliability is possibly worth it. Let's go on back to the planned questions. This one's interesting. Are platforms or product lines staying relevant for more time or less time than they did in the past? What do you think?
I would say more time than in the past, to be honest. Lately, we've seen several generations of CPUs, in this case, being taken advantage of by the same socket, same motherboards. We just got a wonderful AMD release for the 3rd gen, and Verizon, and it's still the same socket. Who knows about tomorrow, of course. We can never promise anything on what concerns technology. But I would say right now, and considering the performance differences right now, because in the old days we knew that after 2-3 years your PC was basically meaningless. I'm talking about around 2000, 2001, when I began building. 6 months passed and you could not run your games anymore, the new games that were coming out. But nowadays you can actually even, and going back to building and tweaking builds and taking advantage of every last cent, you can actually build a top-end build from like 3 years ago and still be able to play current games with very reasonable graphic definitions. I'd say that right now, and this might actually be sad because we're talking about a diminishing return on technology advancement. But I'd say that right now it's probably the best time to be a PC gamer ever, since I've remembered at least. I'm only 34, so I'm not that old. But I think it's the best time ever because you can build it, you can be sure that your build will be relevant for a long time, and you have a lot of upgrade possibilities that you did not have in the past. Remember the times of proprietary RAM being a thing, stuff that was just dreadful for builders, for upgraders, and right now you can build, and you know, I can just change a part or two in a couple of years. I'll probably be able to play away for a few more years. I think it's better now than it ever has been.
Yeah, I do agree in the sense that it's not as easy as it used to be, that you grab everything from a specific year and a specific line, and it's like, oh, this is the minimum that I need for this or those games. Like, it's a little bit harder to decipher nowadays. Like, if you look at the sort of museum of gaming computers of every year, the booth over there, like the one that is like 10 years old, that was very similar to my computer until not very long ago. I was using I'm still using like a third generation i7, and it has like never given me issues. But the GPU is something that usually you have to upgrade more often. So I do agree that it's a great time because there are stuff that doesn't need upgraded as often. It's just a time that requires a little bit more research because it's not obvious what are the best upgrades that you have to do and the stuff that you have to keep up with. So lines are still relevant. It's just that consumers need to do way more research, or at least that's what I believe.
I can't speak much to the older hardware. Like in 2000, I was 6, so like I was, I can say though that for those who have gotten into PC building recently within the past 4 or 5 years, then you probably had one choice 4 or 5 years ago, and that was Intel. If you wanted anything that was like, good at gaming, I would say, without some compromises, that obviously you're paying a lot less for a lot less CPU performance. And Intel milked the heck out of that for a long time. And now that we have that competition back, and now that we have this very viable platform, AM4, that socket is more versatile than I think AMD even initially thought that it would be. The fact that you can get a board that AMD said would never, a chipset that AMD said would never support Zen 2, to actually support Zen 2. Granted with compromises, but the fact that you can even do it in the first place is pretty incredible. And that, again, is a testament to the versatility of the socket. This is probably not going to be the norm. So, I don't know what's going to happen if things flip-flop and AMD becomes the superpower for 3 or 4 years. Companies are all in it to make money for their shareholders, and that's just the reality of it. But I can say I am seriously glad that we have options now, and on both sides things are viable. I think that AMD is just it's a lot easier to move between motherboards and CPUs, and that's something that we were really hoping would be the case with Intel as well, and maybe AMD has now pushed Intel into that mindset. That's the great thing about competition. So we'll see where things go. Yeah.
I agree. So just like, I think there's a few things that affect longevity when it comes to a platform specifically. Talking about AMD with AM4 right now. So I think competition in the CPU space is what affects longevity of a platform when it comes to a motherboard and a socket. Intel was somewhat notorious for having mainstream platforms that would live for 2 years, sometimes 1 year or less. And people weren't always that happy about it. I am ecstatic about AM4 and the fact that we have 3 generations of processors that work on it. I'm hoping Intel sees our enthusiasm for that and thinks, oh, maybe that's something we should look into, because that would be cool. At the same time, lack of competition can also affect longevity of a product. If you look at like the 10 series of GPUs from Nvidia, those were the main GPUs. It's like 2016 when they launched. Yeah, so there you can have a lack of competition forcing companies to come out with something new. So I think it can work both ways, but when it comes to platform overall, I think the AMD story is the most exciting one recently, because people want to be able to upgrade their computers, and I'd love to be able, and upgrading the core components, like I mentioned earlier, is a lot more of a difficult task than upgrading just a processor. Luke, you're in danger.
What? Oh, Jesus. That was actually terrifying. Okay, all right. So I'm going to branch off of that. I think those answers are not too surprising. It is a great time for product lines right now, blah, 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 blah. Great answers. Thanks for coming. Branching off that one, now that product stuff is lasting longer, you can stay longer with certain components, be more relevant. You can play Fortnite for 14 years if you want. What do you think about budgets? We're talking budget versus performance. So if you were buying a computer for yourself, say somewhere like five to 8 years ago, what kind of a budget do you think would have been like a good price performance budget compared to what do you think a good budget is now? Are you spending more now because you can think you can get more longevity out of it? Were you spending less then because you thought you'd have to replace faster? Or were you going harder then because you're trying to get more longevity out of it and less now because you know you can keep it for longer? What do you guys think? Starting with you.
I was spending a lot more money before, I think. If
like per build?
I would say so. I would say so. Going not trying to go back too far, but I remember the first PC I had was a low-end PC, and it cost like the equivalent to $2,000, something like that. I remember having a laptop that it wasn't mine, it was my uncle's, but I think he had to get a loan to get that. That was like $4,000 in the late 90s, stuff like that. I remember that you needed a large amount of money to build a low-end PC. Even 10 years ago, I'd say. 5 years ago, not so much, but right now, I'd say USA prices, I'd say with $500, you can make a nice budget build that you can upgrade very, very well and can stay relevant for quite a while. And going back to what I said before, I think it's the last, I'd say 6 years or so are like the golden age for PC enthusiasts, PC gamers. And I think it's beautiful that we have the chance to see it with our own eyes after so many years of draft, of crossing the desert. I think we've reached the oasis right now.
Yeah, well, my impression is specific to a certain level of budget, but I sort of got the feeling that about 4 or 5 years ago, if you sorted like the PC Gaming Master Race subreddit, and you saw the builds that people were making and stuff like, oh, the console killer and so on, like there was a very good sort of budget that you could do. Then about, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, like everything spiked, everything, like there was the Bitcoin mining thing, there was a lot of, there were no very good low budget options new in the market. Like a bunch of things confabulated, so the price went way up, at least for my category. And now it's sort of going down again, mainly because competition is driving prices down and because there's like really good low budget options coming out. For example, the Ryzen APUs for low budget changed the game. Like they really changed how stuff was made, especially when they started making like the Athlon stuff, like the super cheap stuff that worked well. And it kind of seems like even Intel is competing on that because they announced a new GPU architecture for integrated GPUs, which is weird to have them talking about that like proudly, like, oh, look, all these games that we can play. So yeah, it sort of went like this, and now it's like in a good moment because of that competition.
So I think the budget level build, like $500 entry level, I think that hasn't changed too much. There's of course much better options. I feel like the kind of mid-range, maybe $700 to $900, I think that's crept up. The high end, has gone insane because we've gone from graphics cards that peaked at $500 to $700 to $1,000 to $1,200 to the Titan cards that can cost upwards of $2,000 to $3,000. So there's this Halo product market, I think, that has really raised the cost of those super high-end systems. But at the same time, I think you can still get in at the entry level for not too much more than you would have spent 5 or 10 years ago. And I agree that the APU platform is a great solution for anyone who just, like, I want to build something now with a limited budget that I can start with. In 6 months or a year, I will probably have more money to spend, you know? Get cash from a birthday or something like that, and then you can upgrade this or that and make your system better. So I think that's the kind of the core of what has made me enthusiastic about PC building over the years, is just getting the most for your money and also being able to build something that's flexible that can grow with you as you have more budget to invest into it. So I would also agree that I think we're at an absolutely amazing times for PC building right now and PC gaming in general, but also the enhanced popularity of it, I think, also leads to people who have more disposable income dropping 2 or 3 grand on a build. Even first-time builders who are getting into it, but you know, they're in their 30s or 40s, they got some disposable income to spend. You see first-time builders dropping that much money on a build, and I think maybe you didn't see that quite as much back in the day because it just wasn't as popular. There weren't as many people building them with that much money.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another one that I want to talk about is consoles, actually. The consoles are kind of rhythmic. They come out every 3, 4, maybe plus their years. And as a lot of people know, the graphical fidelity of games on consoles goes up when the new console comes out. So when it's near the end of a console's lifespan, you're not seeing as much progression in quality as you do as when a console first comes out. Now, we actually see a mirror of that to a certain degree on computers. It's nice when new consoles come out because we often get nicer games because they're porting both sides, right? So that's a bit of a timing thing. Do you feel rhythmic timings at all in any way with buying computer components? Do you think there's parts of the year that's better to buy computer components? Do you think there's a good style? Like, do you buy when consoles come out? Do you buy console killers? Do you wait for a while? Is there any timing at all that you guys have done or recommend with building computers, or is it just whenever you want?
There's a sweet spot. Like, if you're super early adopter, you run into driver issues, run into like launch issues. If you go too late, then you're buying a component months from the launch of a new one that is going to replace it. So there's like a sweet spot somewhere in the middle where stuff is mature enough and there are guides online and there's enough of a community that you can use the best of it. But it's not late enough that you are like, oh, maybe I should wait for a next generation. There's some sweet spot there.
I have a term, MDF, which means Marketing Development Funds. So if you guys are looking at any given part that you want to buy, chances are the manufacturer wants to sell it for a specific price, and oftentimes the manufacturers are very specific that it should not go below that price because it devalues their product or something like that. MDF is marketing funds, and this could apply to manufacturers, retailers, anything like that. If you see a big sale that they're advertising, whether it's something like a made-up Amazon Prime Day or whether you're talking about Black Friday sales, you will often see marketing dollars dumped into promotions that allow you to buy stuff for less money than you ever have been able to get it before because it's locked to a specific price. So for that reason, that's why buying around Black Friday can often be very popular, or now it's not just Black Friday, basically the entire month of November. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have especially a high-end part that you're looking for, but you know, it's just a little bit out of your range. If you really want that 2080 Ti, but man, spending over $1,000 isn't in your budget, but somehow $900 makes sense, then wait for those big sales to come up because you'll often be able to find deals on stuff that you wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, I'm not sure about like the connection between the console launch dates and PC specific hardware. I mean, obviously the architectures are relying on each other and they all probably come from similar fabrications, and that could affect inventory levels. There are direct ways to measure that stuff. It's not something that I've tried to see if there was a direct connection or not. What I will say, though, is that product prices are heavily influenced by other product prices and other product launches, especially those that compete directly with those products you're interested in. So you'll have launches that like immediately undercut or totally phase out previous architectures, right? So like the Pascal 1070 was an incredible card, not only because it was significantly more efficient than the 980 Ti equivalent, but it was also significantly cheaper than the 980 Ti equivalent. I use that analogy a lot because it was one of those times where I really felt like the consumer was benefiting across the board. It was one of the times Nvidia did a really great job kind of undercutting their own products in a good way, right? As technology advances, you would expect, all things equal, that technology to become cheaper over time. I think the timing really has more to do with internally, like PC hardware itself. I think the console thing is, I'm sure there are connections, but to the extent to those, to which those connections affect our prices for hardware that we buy, I would say it would have to be en masse. Like there would have to be a huge sell out of inventory or something to directly affect prices in the long run for us.
Cool. Yeah, I'm not actually sure how much more time we have left on this panel, so I'm going to div a little bit. None? Are we done?
Well, not quite. There is a small matter to take care of. So you guys have spent a lot of time sort of discussing how to get the most out of a very small budget, but I actually have my own contribution if you guys don't mind.
I think we do.
Are you pregnant,
yeah.
Linus? Is this a big announcement?
Yeah, so one really good way to squeeze more out of your budget is to get hardware given to you for free at LTX. So this is not going to be an easy one, and in fact, I looked at the answer right before I came up onto the stage, and I've already forgotten, so you'll have to pardon me one moment. Cool. I need the first person in the audience, first person in the audience to tell me, and I need to see your hand. Don't shout it out, because if you shout it out, everybody will know. The first person to raise their hand, and I will point at you, and you will try to answer the question. What shape is this? Saw you first in the hard drive shirt right there with the glasses. It is a dodecahedron. Come on up here. This is a Core i9 9900K unlocked processor, and why on earth do you know that?
Because for a project, I was modeling up a set of dice, and this is a D12 shape, so I had to look up the
What a nerd!
Come on, guys, let's hear some noise. Cool project, right? Congratulations, man. Good work. What are you going to do with it? Don't say eBay.
I gotta get a new motherboard.
Nice. All right. Round of applause, guys. I've actually got 2 more fun prizes for people, and I'd like to have one of my special guests handle this one. So, Paul.
Okay.
It's a nice shirt you've got there.
Thank you. It's oxblood.
So you get something really cool to give away, and this is the challenge.
The second.
Right there, the first 2080. So
Super secret.
all right. It's a real challenging one. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna take a seat. I'm gonna let Paul take this away. He didn't know he was doing this, but whatever. I'm not gonna take all the fun. I'm not gonna just take the spotlight forever and make it so no one else gets a chance.
Hi guys. All right. So I have to say a word of warning because Linus has an idea for how we're going to choose the winner of this, and I feel like it might create a dangerous situation. So if you qualify for what I'm about to say, you're going to want to make your way up to the stage, but I don't want anyone to get run over or hurt. Let me just put it that way. All right. This is a RTX 2080, the Nvidia Founders Edition. The person who gets this is going to be the first person who can get to the stage without killing anyone or injuring anyone, who is not, no, wait,
Guys,
wait,
sit
wait,
down.
wait. You, on your person right now, need to have merch, paraphernalia, clothing, or otherwise from 3 of the different vendors who are presenting here at LTX.
So I'm
gotta have
talking
that-
creators. Creators.
Oh, the
So you need
creators.
to, you gotta
Oh.
have like some LMG merch, some
Okay.
Paul's Hardware merch, some Gamers Nexus merch. You gotta have all 3.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
No,
Not
NZXT
vendors, it is
Corsair, you're out. You're
creators.
done.
All right. I didn't see who got in first, so we need a tiebreaker here. I'm going to say the 3 of you guys since you're standing in front of me.
Hold on a second. Can I hear? Sorry, who you got?
All right.
Zotac doesn't count.
Oh, we're looking for creators.
RS doesn't count. Creators. Oh, just creators? Just creators,
Yes.
guys. Just creators.
That
I
was-
need merch from 3 creators. They've got to be ones that are here, guys. Signatures do not count. I'm so sorry.
This is a tough one.
I don't think business cards count. Sorry.
Oh, he's going
worth a
back.
shot.
He ran up and then left.
What?
Oh,
Oh.
oh.
Hold on a second.
Hey, does an Awesome Hardware shirt count as 2? Because that's me and Kyle.
You know what?
Oh.
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. Let's
He's
see what
pulling
else he's
stuff
got.
out.
Let's
We're
see what
both
else he's
here.
got. What do you got? Hold it up. Hold it up
Oh,
for
look
the
at
crowd
that.
to see.
That's a Paul's Hardware thumbscrew logo.
That is a
t-shirt.
Paul's Hardware shirt.
Available at paulshardware.net. He is also wearing an Awesome Hardware sword fight shirt. Also available at paulshardware.net.
And an LMG
and we got an
CPU
LMG
shirt.
right there.
Boom. He did it.
Whoa. For you, sir. Congratulations. Use it well. Upgrading from the PNY GTX 660.
Do you have any words?
Just kidding. He brought this here because
Thank you
it's
very
damaged.
much, sir.
Oh, it's not from me. It's from Nvidia. Massive thanks to Intel and Nvidia, by the way, for these prizes. They're not from me, guys.
Good job.
Thanks, Paul. And dude, why do you have a backpack full of like all these shirts? Do you sweat that much? He's got everything. He's got the Paul's Hardware. Are you selling merch at our show?
No, a few people have asked me about that. It's all in Vermont, so you gotta get it shipped.
Look at this. You've even got an OG fist bump shirt. This is the first ever LTT shirt that we produced. Can I sign it for you? You hold this for me? Don't drop it.
Linus. No. Oh, you got a pen? I got a pen. Okay. I wonder what else we're giving away.
Luke, you want to do this one?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so I've got some guidelines here. Maybe I should just explain it. I don't know, whatever. Oh, this one's going to be really challenging. So this is the idea. If you have something better, we can go with that. That's a lot, I know. I know, it's a real challenge, isn't it? It's a big ask. Yeah, I don't care. We're thinking. It's going to be an RTX 2080, though, so it's worth giving us a minute here. This sounds like a terrible idea, so I'm going to sit in your chair, and I'm going to let you handle it. So this one is also going to have the box signed by everyone here on the panel right now. And also me, because I just can't resist inserting myself into things.
Okay, so I'm actually going to be kind of a jerk. I'm sorry to everyone here. But this is an idea that technically Nvidia did a very long time ago at PAX that I loved. This is to the BYOC people. Everyone that just cheered, if you're in BYOC, you're going to want to go back to BYOC. The contest is the first person to take, and I want it like warm because it needs to come from your computer. The first person to go and get me a graphics card from your computer and bring it up here gets a 2080. Is it a TI?
Someone's going to bring
Not
up
a TI, regular
2080.
It's a
regular
2080.
2080. Regular 2080.
I want it warm. This needs to be from a computer. No,
You're
they
a
get
monster.
a 2080. They can bring me whatever. Oh my goodness. It's kind of cold.
Is it warm?
Was this running? Was
me
this
feel
running? His system.
It's cold. Cold.
It has to have been running. Sorry about that.
It's cold. Luke, want to feel one?
Ooh, was it running? In your system, in BYC. It was off. I need one that's warm. This one is warm! Come on up. Come on up. What even is this thing? 1050 Ti. That is a tiny 1050 Ti. And that is a massive upgrade.
My man.
So hold on a second. Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question about this 1050? It's hot.
It is hot.
Is this your actual daily driver cart?
No.
Why is it here then?
I built a LAN PC specifically for here.
Well, you're going to have a pretty fantastic LAN PC going forward, I think. Dude, what's your name?
Jason.
Congrats, Jason.
That was fun.
I think someone's serial number sticker came off of their graphics card.
Warranty may be void if removed.
Just let me know if it's yours, BJANRC.
Are we done? Do we have time?
Yeah,
Let's
you
go.
guys are done. Yeah,
We're getting
that
the
was
heck
time.
outta
That was
here?
why- yeah, that was why I was coming up. So guys, thanks to our whatever this was, budget versus performance panel. That's right? Yes. I looked at the schedule before I came up. Thanks to you guys for sticking around for the giveaways. I think we have one more panel to close out the day. Is that right? James is coming up. I clearly am struggling up here, so he's coming to relieve me. Thank you, James.
We're basically just giving stuff away the rest of the day. Free Geek is going to come up here in a few moments with a raffle just like yesterday. Then we're going to just do this more.
All right, so thanks to our panel, guys. Can we get a big round of applause?
And I literally think we have something for everybody, so stick around.